What's up, guys? We are back with another Mythic Legions review, taking a look at the second figure in the first wave of Legacies of Mythoss. We're taking a look at URZOKK today. So URZOKK, of course, just like Otho, came out in the first Kickstarter for Legions and is one of those relatively expensive, relatively hard to find figures that most folks at this point just don't have. So this is a great way to get us an updated version of this figure. Now, for this release, Otho and URZOKK both went up on Store Horsemen on the 15th of September and sold out in a few hours as a set of two. On the 19th of September, which is in the future from when this video will go up, they are going to be available as single figures as a pre-order. So if you missed them or you need a bunch more, you'll have the opportunity starting on the 19th. Now, just like Otho, this guy comes in, we'll say, more deluxe style packaging. It's more reminiscent of a single figure that they do for exclusives, you know, Legions Con, for example. So you've got him there in the window. We've got that new logo treatment down there on the bottom. There's a very Arethyr feel to this one with a bunch of fire and stuff like that. Arethyr's faction symbol is on one spine. You've got a product shot from Trevor Williams on the other. The back of the box gives us new character-specific artwork for URZOKK, which I am in love with. Cross-sell for Otho, as well as cross-sell for upcoming figures in Legacies for the Aetheron faction and the Necronominus faction, as well as our bio for this very angry orc. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Mythic Legions Legacies of Mythoss URZOKK figure. So he, again, is the counterpart to Otho in this first two-figure wave. This guy was also a surprise reveal. We knew about Otho for almost a year now. We did not know that URZOKK was coming, or really anything around how they were going to release this new subline. I think this is a pretty solid entry on, we'll say, you know, we had Otho on the good guy side, URZOKK on the bad guy side. I think this is a pretty solid entry because he is up there with those figures that have not been, you know, they've not been refreshed, they don't have a V2 already, and are really expensive, you know, hundreds of dollars for a complete figure at this point on the aftermarket. He is from that original Kickstarter wave, so he is a very old figure, and by comparison, and we will be doing a comparison to the original figure in this video, by comparison, this is a night and day difference. This guy is so much more different compared to his original figure. That first figure is just like every other figure in the first wave, really, which is to say, they all kind of use the same parts. So let's see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. There's a lot of new stuff here. Like, there's stuff that's on this figure that are from the Rising Suns wave and stuff that I don't think we've ever really seen before. Some stuff that I can't place right away. But a lot of this is very familiar, with one big difference in this figure compared to Otho. So as far as moving him around, you know, we've got up and we've got down. There is a lot of stuff going on at this guy's chest and his neck and his shoulders when you've got him fully kitted out. None of it really gets in the way, though. So we've got, you know, up and down. It's a hinged ball peg neck. You've got tilt side to side. Of course, you've got rotation. The gorget is going to get in the way a little bit, but honestly, it's really not that bad. It's very, very flexible. He does have some monstrous pauldrons on him. They, of course, are going to cinch around the neck, but he still gets his arm pretty much all the way. You do, of course, have swivel. These don't really get in the way as much as some of the other pauldrons. Now, of course, he's not going to be able to do his arm all the way around, but you can obviously already tell that. We've got our new range elbows on this guy. They, of course, swivel. You've got gauntlet forearm swivel, and then he's got wrist rotation and lateral hinge. This is a 1.0 style figure, but he's got really good range. Again, despite all the stuff going on around this figure and on this figure, he moves really well. Forward crunch is pretty good still. You do afford some bobble side to side. Of course, you've got your rotation point there. Let's get his head up out of his chest. Legs are going to go out all the way. Again, he's got a bunch of stuff going on, but it still doesn't really hinder him. Kick forward, backward. You got your thigh twist. We've got our single jointed new range knees. Those do still afford some swivel, but this guy has boot cut swivel. So he has one of those new pieces that is in between the kneecap and the actual ankle joint. There is still ankle swivel at the top of the ankle. Still got rocker action. And then, of course, we've got hinges. So he is, I mean, he's just as updated as Otho, but slightly more because he does have that extra cut at the boot that we've only just really started seeing this year in terms of figures. Like, we got it on that Barbarian. We knew it was coming as of the Rising Suns wave, but we haven't really seen a lot of it until relatively recently. So he is overwhelmingly a very current standard of Legions, with some of that go forward new style articulation at the lower legs when it comes to how he's built compared to Otho. Equally, if not more impressive from his articulation, especially with all this stuff on him, is the visuals and the comparison between V1 and V2. And we'll get to comparison here shortly. But this figure is so different thematically, really. Like, it obviously appears to be more armored, more heavily armored than the first figure. Because, again, most figures in that first wave were really just the mishmash of a handful of parts. He was just a standard figure. There was nothing specifically different about him outside of his head sculpt, the finish on his armor, because he had a relatively unique paint scheme, and his shield. Everything else was just sort of boilerplate Mythic Legions 1.0 Kickstarter. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just that was almost 10 years ago right now. So he does incorporate, again, he incorporates a lot of new stuff. Like, there's a lot of pieces and parts on here that I'm just not placing right now. Maybe I've seen them, maybe I've not, maybe we've never seen them. I truly don't really remember. Some of the finish on this is throwing some of it off, the way they've painted it, how pockmarked all of this armor is. It's really just this very intense, very brutal set of armor that absolutely, and there's no way I'm alone in this, is going to lend itself to the obvious, Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings, Orc/Uruk-hai look and feel. Like, that kind of armor is what I think a lot of folks expect to see on an Orc. And we've gotten some of that in Legions, and of course Legions is its own thing. But this is the one thing that's really thrown us into that direction. Like, this guy is absolutely going to mess you up, and he's not going to care about it. Like, he is here to throw down, and his armor is purely utilitarian. It is basically a solid color. It's obviously not a solid color, but for the intents of, what you're looking at, it just looks like a really dark metal. There is a decent amount of dry brushing over top of it to bring out a lot of that pockmarked and craggy detail. But at face value, he's a very dark suit of armor with some brown accents, with a few little red accents. Like, we've got this belt that we've seen before, but we've got this new buckle, which is obviously like a skull with this like banding around it, an axe through the head. So like, it could be a makeshift weapon if it came down to it in the heat of battle. You rip his belt buckle off and jam it in someone's head or something. We've got these Dark Knight style, half metal, half leather and fur bracers here. We've seen these on Atlas in the Rising Suns wave. We haven't seen them in hand, but we've seen them, in the reveal and everything. We've got the same harness that Atlas has, so this thing is new, right? So it wraps over the shoulders. It's a single piece that wraps over the entire buck. That's why I said he does have a lot of stuff going on up here, because in conjunction with this, with these big old monster pauldrons and this monstrous gorget, he is kind of like locked down. It's almost like a prison for him, really. I can't imagine this is a fun set of armor to wear, but he does look like just intense with this. All sorts of these muted dark tones. There is a little bit of copper and bronze and gold coloring in some of the chainmail, but overwhelmingly this guy is just like this sea of darkness when it comes to his color scheme. A lot of pitted, worn, battle-hardened armor. All of this stuff with... A lot of this does make me think of like Guts from Berserk in the Berserker armor, how jagged and plated that seems. Like, a lot of this armor right here kind of makes me think about that, which is not a bad thing either, because that's awesome. But he does look, absolutely terrific. I'm really impressed with how far this figure has come in comparison to Otho. Not that Otho is bad by any means, right? But he is a very direct progression from that first figure to the new. We've got tabards in place of, that single buck colored piece. We've got similar kinds of armor. We've got, the same kind of head sculpt. This guy has new heads that feature new expressions. He's got very different, bulkier, beefier style of armor. He looks a lot bigger than your standard original 1.0 Mythic Legions, which I think, maybe kind of what they're going for. It gives him a little bit more oomph, makes him seem a little bit more important as well. And again, it just makes him seem like a focal point on the battlefield. And of course, he is a major player in his faction. We do, of course, get new heads, like I mentioned. This one plays up the same idea that we've seen with the original, with that like war paint banding across the face. But we've got this very angry, gritted of the teeth expression with the tusks poking out. He's got a furrowed brow. And this is something that we haven't gotten tons and tons of in Legions in general. The expressive faces are relatively still few and far between, so it's cool to get not just one, but more than one with this particular figure, and we'll get to those others. But this one, I mean, the green looks great. I'm looking forward to using these other heads on other figures as well, just to, spread the love a little bit. But this guy he just looks intense, very, very hardcore, and again, another great progression and a big, big change up in style and theming of that first URZOKK figure into what we see now. And then as promised, here is our comparison. So we've got Kickstarter Wave 1, URZOKK V1 on the right. We've got Legacies of Mythoss, URZOKK V2 on the left. And the similarities are pretty obvious, but the differences are pretty glaring at this point. This guy is rare and he's expensive these days, but there is, in terms of parts, nothing unique about him. He uses all standard parts. The only thing that sets this figure apart from anything else is his paint scheme. And even then, it's a relatively minor thing. So he does, of course, still have the war paint. You've got the war paint head sculpt, which is nowhere near as detailed or as impressive on this first figure as the new one. He uses all the standard parts. So he's got what I've always called like the Dark Knight parts on the pauldrons, the forearms, the belt, the shins, the feet, and then he's got standard knight parts beyond that. The torso is that standard knight torso we've seen forever, and he does have a somewhat unique paint scheme on the armor. It's like a dingy gunmetal-y color, which is obviously where they got the idea to keep it going with this. I think that's pretty clear. But he also has sort of like a grimy dry brushing over everything. It might be fairly difficult to actually pick up because it's really minor. It's hard to notice it in person sometimes. But there's clear inspiration from this figure to this figure. He's got similar kind of pauldrons. He's got similar forearms. He's got similar shins and feet. He's got a very similar loin piece as well. It's just everything is more detailed now. The head sculpts are more impressive now. The paint scheme is more impressive now. He even has, we haven't done accessories yet, but he even has, inspiration for the shield. So this is the original shield. I guess I should do the right side. This is the original shield, and this is the new shield. So not nearly as impressive on the old as the new. The sculpt is different, obviously. The level of paint detail is very different as well. But there is clear inspiration, clear progression from V1 to V2, just like with the Otho figure. But I do think in many ways this is just incredibly impressive to see and have these in hand because, again, just like with Otho, this is a great way to show where this line started, for folks like me who have been in this for forever at this point, to see kind of where it all began and to see where it is now and where it's going. It's just really, really impressive, and it makes me even more excited for what's coming down the pipeline. Now, as far as accessories goes, URZOKK has a decent amount of stuff, and we've got a bunch of new stuff here, which is what's really the most important. But if you compare the two figures in this wave, Otho absolutely comes out on top. He's overwhelmingly more loaded than URZOKK, and it's just a numbers game. He has more stuff. Of course, we do have other things on here that count as kind of accessory items. The pauldrons are an accessory item. The gorget around his neck. This is one of those few figures where I think you don't necessarily need that because he also has, the wraps and the belt and this harness that's on him. It kind of doubles him up a little bit. So you've got some other parts that you can swap in and out to change his look. But then you've also, of course, got some heads. So the first one that we talked about was the gritted of the teeth, the tusks out, the very angry looking expression. This one I believe they've labeled the war cry expression, and it's obviously more expressive, and it's a different expressive head sculpt, which just at face value is really cool to get, because then you could use this on another figure and have, two angry white marked orcs on your shelf. But I really, really like this one, not just because it's another expressive head, but because of the expression itself. So you got a full, this gangly maw of teeth in there. You've got the different textures and sort of finishes to showcase that the inside of his mouth is wet. You've got a furrowed brow, the whole 9 yards to complete this look and make him seem just pissed. And then, of course, we've also got, because you need a standard one, we've got a standard orc head as well, complete again with the white war paint on his face. So this is more reminiscent of the head sculpt that he came with initially. One of the big areas that I will say is kind of an omission for this figure, and I think it's just because these hands, I guess they don't exist yet, right? I can't remember. We've got so many different hands in this line. I can't remember what we are or aren't missing anymore, but he does not include anything else. All he has are laterally hinged gripping hands. And this is probably the big area that's going to look different to Otho. Otho has 3 full sets of hands. He only has the 1, and this kind of takes us back a bit. I suspect we're going to see some more evil Dark Knight style expressive hands coming sooner than later, so you can probably just swap them in. But otherwise, it is something to note. Beyond that, he includes 3 additional accessories. So we've got this monster cleaver axe, and it looks, very cobbled together, like tribal kind of accessory. It looks like something that an orc might use. It doesn't look nearly as refined. And it's got, browns and tans and silvers. It's pockmarked, it's all worn and beaten and battered, so that's really cool. We get this sword, which we're getting a lot of stuff that I really like with these 2 figures, and this is just up there. I'm a big fan of this style of sword, and we've got stuff in this line that is somewhat similar in terms of look and feel and the overall shape here, but this is taking it up a little bit. This very much matches the war-torn, battle-hardened armor that he's wearing, because this thing is all just beat to hell, but it looks really good. And then the last thing we get is an homage to his original shield from that first figure, because that was one of the few truly unique items that he featured, was that shield with this faction, sort of tribal logo on there. And this is a new shield entirely. This looks, beaten and battered into shape. It's got that new setup on the back that Otho's shield has. Even got texture on the back as well. Like there's a lot of pitting and pockmarking. But this looks great, and of course is kind of one of the unique signature items for URZOKK that this guy literally just needed to have to be complete. So, he doesn't have an overwhelming amount of parts, and this, I guess, is maybe a bit of a shock because every figure almost comes with too much these days, but he still has a lot of stuff. We've got 3 total heads, we've got 2 big monster weapons, we've got the pauldrons, we've got the chest harness, we've got the gorget, and we've got the shield. He may not have as much as Otho does, but he's got a lot of really cool accessories to add to the parts library. So yeah, overall, this is an absolute winner. Like, there's no doubt about it. Both of the figures in this first wave are just knocking it out of the park when it comes to not only character choice and reasonings why we're getting V2s of these figures in this way, but how they're being done. There's just so much new. It's not just a refresh with a current set of parts. A lot of this stuff is absolutely brand new stuff we've never seen in hand yet. So that on its own is just exciting. He has kind of a natural progression from his original, which is still a pretty basic Legions figure design, into something that is much more, brutal is really the word I like to use when I look at him. This guy looks like he will absolutely mess you up and not think twice about doing it. Again, it very much pulls in, at least for me, and I'm sure I'm not alone, it pulls a lot of, Lord of the Rings movie URZOKK vibes when it comes to just how intense and jagged and sharp and incredibly painful this armor looks. Not to mention the fact we get all these new heads, we get a handful of new weapons, and a lot of the stuff with this figure is just new. The only real downside is that we still don't have extra hands for this figure, which is a bummer, but otherwise, they absolutely knocked it out of the park. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legions Legacies of Mythoss URZOKK V2. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.